Well, I think that.
You think what?
I was thinking about it.
You don't think it.
Will you two shut up?
No.
I'm trying to decide which of you I like more.
Oh, obviously
Clearly
it's me.
Well, I choose the commander.
Did you hear something?
Ladies, gentlemen, and masters of all ages, at this point in time, Rise is looking all but complete until the release of Sunbreak. And now that we have had a good amount of time to reflect back on it, it's time for a discussion that people have been trying to have for months. Which was better as a Monster Hunter base game? Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter Rise? Of course, I'll be giving my own perspective on the matter as someone whose first game was Monster Hunter World, but we also asked all of you guys for your thoughts on the matter as well, resulting in a good amount of conversation in the comments and a final result from 62% of you saying that base Monster Hunter World was better than Monster Hunter Rise. And reading the actual comments has given me some insight as to why this voting is the way that it is as well. Of course, if you'd like to take part in the discussions like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more so that you know when a post like this goes up. And also please leave a like if you like the video, as it helps us out quite a bit. Obviously, there are the obvious hot button topics. Some people think that Rise has no real endgame, that Rise is too easy, and if you fall in either of those camps, then you'll probably go straight to World in this discussion. If you like Monster Hunter but don't have a Switch, I'd also hedge my bet that most of those people would probably vote for Monster Hunter that they have played instead of the Monster Hunter that they have not played, so that could skew things a bit as well. These things aside, there are more interesting elements at play here as well, such as your preferred pace of combat. Rise is a comparatively very fast game. It also cuts out a lot of preparation to sort of streamline the experience to be as hunt now as possible, but more importantly, the combat itself is also fast-paced. The wirefall mechanics makes knockdowns shorter. We also have movement options that we didn't have before, so the monsters also have movement options they didn't have before, and also more attacking options. There are also palamutes in Rise, and if you like palamutes, then that will probably have a pretty big impact on your thoughts in this discussion as well. For the most part, I would say Rise has a better combat system itself in a vacuum. The base weapons are still designed well, silk binds are a very fun addition, switch skills add an extra layer of personalization for each hunter that I absolutely adore, and for many people, mantles in Monster Hunter World were a negative change for the series rather than a positive. That said, since we are specifically talking about base Monster Hunter World, it's important to note that we aren't talking about the Clutch Claw. Base World's combat was nothing to scoff at by any means. I would say that it is incredibly close to Rise, but I personally just have a preference for movement-oriented gameplay, and Rise has a lot of that going on. We also have to consider that statistically, the majority of Monster Hunter players' first game in the series was Monster Hunter World, and every one of them loses something sort of really big in World's favor, while of course gaining the fact that it was the first game. A lot of the comments here talk about how much Rise did with the combat system, how much Rise changed from World. The switch skills, the silk binds, the palamutes, the extra movement options, the spirit birds, and all of that, but every one of those things is made possible because of something that World revolutionized, which is, well, the world. The open world, that is, as every Monster Hunter game beforehand had maps with the separated areas that had loading screens between them. If you only compare World and Rise, then World seems to be a bit bare bones, but if you remember what the series was before Monster Hunter World, then you know how big of a deal this change was, how alive everything suddenly started to feel in Monster Hunter World, and I'm happy to admit that I think Rise loses a little bit of that living world feel in order to streamline the actual combat gameplay experience. It may sound a little plain to put it like that, but even such a simple thing as in Rise, every monster is always aggressive. If they see you, they will start fighting you, just immediately. It's just how they are. It gets the actual quote-unquote gameplay started as quickly as physically possible. What it loses, though, is that beautiful element of of Monster Hunter World where you could just passively follow monsters around, just silently observing them go about their regular idle animations, their routine, seeing them interact with small monsters or with certain plant life, and it sort of made it feel like they genuinely live in these environments, and this is what they would do normally, and we're just sort of interrupting them. In games before World, it had a bit of that feeling. They did feel like they belonged in these places, but it was also a bit like they were just sort of sitting in one prearranged arena waiting for you to approach for your battle appointment. And honestly, Rise feels just a touch closer to that than it does to World's living, breathing environments, at least in my opinion. World was very, very special in this way. It is interesting too, because lore-wise in Rise, we are technically more in tune with the map than ever before. The number of friendly helpers we can pick up between the spirit birds and the elemental beetles, the healing snail, all of these things, the ways that we can climb around every single part of the maps, and these creatures, they're all ones that live on each map that we take advantage of. Different creatures on the different maps is unique to the locales, and when you get used to them, you can hunt more efficiently. That said, when you remove the sort of thin veil of what they are on the outside, they are power-ups located in set positions on the map every single time you load in. And I think that while it would be incredibly difficult to arrange, it would definitely be more interesting for hunting if the locations of these creatures were randomized every time you load the map. After all, they are all living creatures. They may have like an area that they would generally prefer to hang out in, but the concept that they would just be on the exact same inch every single time makes it very hard to think of it as a living creature instead of just a mechanical character power-up.
You are simply a machine.
Every one of those things that I just mentioned, however, is a large part of what makes Rise such a fun game to play. The combat is just extremely satisfying. It's almost like an arcade game version of Monster Hunter in a way, but that's also just it. It is Monster Hunter, undeniably, but it is a very different flavor of Monster Hunter from what we are mostly used to, from what World is, and from the older games as well. Rise is probably my favorite combat in the entire series, but keep in mind that is also from someone who mains a weapon that only plays the way that it does in Rise. While I love the concept of the endgame for Rise being incredibly freeform and allowing you to progress talismans by hunting any monster in the game, the actual implementation of it left a lot of people lacking in direction. World, on the other hand, had investigations where I think were an incredible system, and they definitely gave people this direction, but then also they had the tempered monsters, which I think was a hit and miss mechanic realistically, by which I mean that the concept of having a subset of endgame monsters that are just harder than the ones that you fight in the story is a fantastic idea, but the reality was that most people would just hunt 2 or 3 monsters over and over and over and over again, and 90% of the game's roster just wouldn't do anything at all for you progression-wise, so unless you wanted to do it purely for the thrill of the hunt, those monsters just wound up largely ignored. Story-wise, both World and Rise are pretty exceptional when compared to the rest of the series. Sorry, and while Rise definitely did a good job, I personally preferred the story of Monster Hunter World. I found it truly engaging, and it really tied into how alive the world felt as well. As a whole, all in all, for me, Monster Hunter World was a better game, but I sure as hell do enjoy Rise more, if that makes sense. The moment-to-moment fun scale of Rise is much higher to me, but as an experience, as a whole, as a complete gaming product, Monster Hunter World is the victor in my mind, especially as it doesn't have any particularly notable stains on its reputation, like the Clutch Claw for Iceborne in the expansion. Now that I've talked about my own thoughts, though, of course, and responded a bit to the thoughts that you all shared with me in the comments that you left as well, how do the rest of you feel? Do your thoughts align with the majority in this poll, or are you on the flip side? Personally, I think it is entirely based on what you most value about your Monster Hunter games. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been a discussion about which game was better as a base Monster Hunter game, Rise or World. What are your predictions on how Sunbreak will pan out? And remember, there isn't really a bad Monster Hunter game out there, just one that maybe doesn't align with what you like most about Monster Hunter. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.